In the name of Allah, the most merciful, mighty and gracious to all. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and welcome to the class of organizational behavior. In this lecture, we are going to discuss about the perception and individual ethical decision making. In this lecture, here first I would like to explain the perception, and inshallah in the upcoming lecture we will discuss about the ethical decision making of an individual. Now let's start from the first section of the topic, that is perception. What is perception? Before starting the theory or before starting the definition, let me explain the concept of perception here from an example. Suppose I'm going to write down here 6. Is it? That is clear a phenomena. It is an event. It can be a number. It can be a thing. Anything. Here I have Mr. A, and here I have Mr. B. When Mr. A looks at this number, it is looking 9 to Mr. A. While when Mr. B look at this number, it is seeing 6 to Mr. B. Now if you focus, we have a same thing, but that is perceived in two different angles or from two different angles by Mr. A and Mr. B. When Mr. A is perceiving the same thing as a 9 and Mr. B is perceiving the same thing as a 6, so it means the single thing that is perceived by two people, clear, this sensory experiences is known as your perception. Now we can simply say that what is perception? So perception, that is simply a phenomena, that is simply a message. It can be an event, it can be an object, it can be an individual, anything which is perceived by two people, clear, within the same situation. So that is known as your perception. Look at here, the definition says a process by which individuals organize, let me first highlight here, organize, interpret their sensory impressions in order to give meaning to their environment. It means whatever the individual is basically getting through the sensory experiences. Sensory experiences mean it can be, for example, the sense of watching, see, the sense of smell, the sense of touch, is it? The sense of hearing, the sense of smell. So just because of the sensory experiences, when an individual is perceiving a single thing from two different aspects, so such is known as your perception. It can also be, for example, explained within another example. That was the bal example saram clear kama. It will make your idea inshallah fully clear. Whereas suppose I have a glass of water. Sorry, देखिए drawing च कम दे आकार दे दासे खन्ने की गी, लेकिन suppose it's a glass of water. Is it? दादे. When I ask from Mr. A to define, for example, this glass of water, he simply said that the glass is half filled with water. Is it? When I say to Mr. B that Mr. B please define the glass, he said that glass is half empty, the nim khalide. The same thing is perceived by Mr. A in one aspect and the same thing is perceived by Mr. B, clear, in another aspect. So what does it mean? It means that, clear, just because of the sensory experiences, because they have observed, they have seen this thing. So just because of the sensory experiences, when Mr. A and Mr. B perceive the same thing in two different angles, is it? So that is known as perception. Or in other words, we can say that perception simply that think or perceive the things, clear, away from the reality. It means that something in reality is different, but we are perceiving it different. It means that we are perceiving the things away from the reality. People's behavior is based on their perception of what reality is, not on reality itself. Now hope perception mata so idea lage inshallah clear shawi hum. Now we are studying about clear the factors which having impact over the perception, or what are the different forces which bring clear some positive or some negative impacts on the perception. अगर कम दास factors ही जो perception affect की, we have categorically three types of factors. One is the perceiver, for example, factors. One is the target factors, and another is the situation factor. अब let me the total explanation today that is that time आखिरी, लेकिन I would like to give you clear a few. It will make your idea fully clear. Gura, under the perceiver factor, we have the attitudes, we have the motives, we have the interests, we have the experiences, and we have the expectations. Now suppose attitude, how attitude affect the perception. If I have a positive attitude about an individual, suppose Zawayama, Sir Tariq Chikamde, Mr. Tariq Seshwa, he is a very punctual person. Ab if he is a punctual person, next time clear kala hum Sir Tariq ta yo task assign kigi, is it? So I will have clear a positive attitude towards Sir Tariq. So my perception will be positive towards Sir Tariq. So it means attitudes also clear have a impact on the perception. Dina ilawa, for example, take the example of experience. So next wali experience. Here is the experience. Up the way, suppose if I had a positive experience, so next time upon the positive experience, my perception will be positive. And if I had the bad experience, so definitely my for potential for future, my perception will be definitely positive, negative. Now we have some more factor, situational factors. Like for example, time. A time clear also impact our perception. Like as a way, for example, the organization give me the tough time. Is it? Yeah, for din ilawa, someone is very much regular. Is it? So ab regularity this time clear that is again affecting clear my perception. Dina ilawa work setting. Zawayama work setting chikamde da hum zamung perception mane dir dia tasir lali. It also affects our perception. Like suppose Zawayama, I have seen a company ABC. I worked clear in one of its franchise and there the work setting was awesome. Now I'm going to shift to, for example, another franchise of that company, ABC company. I am perceiving that where I was working, that work setting was very much good. Setup I hope I am perceiving that you altabum work setting company first franchise ke setting work setting khawa. No, it means time, work setting, and social setting. It also impact our perception. Then we have some target factors. Like for example, novelty, like for example, motion, like for example, sounds, size, background, proximity, similarity. Is it? All these are basically the targeted factors. Do explain kama just to make your idea clear. Suppose when I'm saying motion, a motion, for example, the movement of a person. He has a very, for example, there jase akad ke chalegi. Now when we observe his clear body movement, we just perceive that this person might be a bully person. Yadina ilawa kidishi yokaste. Seshwa proximity. Matlab proximity means signs. Yokaste there gutiya chawlidi. The person who wears clear a lot of rings in the fingers, and he also wear, for example, the chain. Up from this clear, I am perceiving that again this person will be a bully type person. Is it? Ab kidishi a bully type nahi, lekin this is just proximity. A person who is wearing, proximity means a sign. A person who is wearing clear every time the white clothes. A white clothes, that is a sign of preciousness. Pakizgi sign da. Is it? No uskura dena ilawa sizeum ki dishi. Like a sanga chizawayama, for example, the Asian biggest mountain, that is Mount Everest. K2 chivartavayu. अब गोरा चिस्सरंगे biggest खबर राशि जमुन सेहन की एकदम perception राशि about the K2, about the Mount Everest. This is just because of what? This is just because of the size. That's सिर्फ और सिर्फ size से लासा. So therefore it says that we have so many factors which affect clear the perception of an individual. Now, when we want to make judgment about the other people, definitely we will face clear, we will do perception. In regard, we have an attribution theory which explains that what is basically clear the concept of attribution theory. Attribution theory simply says when individuals observe behaviors, they attempt to determine whether it is internally or externally caused. Like for example, when an individual is behaving or doing some action, either this action is influenced by the internal trait or either this is influenced by the external factors. Like as a suppose when I secured clear 95% marks, I can credit it clear by my own self. This is just because of my clear own effort. That is internal cause. Because no, I become failure. This is just because of clear the external factors. मतलब बिजली ना study होने कड़ा कोर के मरीजान जो ज़का मैं study होने कड़ा माँ को study करी वाले लेकिन organize कसानों चे कम दे the exam ta pre ना खुदम सही हुआ. It means that I am, for example, focusing the external factors. So simply stated, attribution theory the way chikala hum individual you want to you want to make perceptions about the individual or you are judging the individual, you must have to be focused that either this is just because of the internal factor or this is just because of the external factors. Attribution theory simply says that when perceiving about others, there will be three different responses by the individual. That will be the distinctiveness response, that will be the consensus response, and it can be consistency response. What is distinctiveness? Distinctiveness matlab mukhtalif. It means that an individual is showing the different behaviors outcomes in different situations. While we have the consensus, simply that individual will show the behavior or responses in the same situation as others to same situation. And we have the another response, that is consistency. Consistency means regularity, the accurateness. It means that response in the same way over time. But for example, whatever I am behaving in the class, I have the same behavior in the hostel as well. I have the same behavior in the home as well. Is it? So now attribution theory simply said that individual will have three different responses, and three different responses will stimulate clear the outcomes of an individual, the causes of an individual. Like in distinctive, the individual will have clear the higher external, for example, factor influence. In consensus, again the individual will have clear the higher external consensus factor, and in consistency the internal factor will be at high. Whatever I said, I would like to explain with the help of a diagram. It will make your idea fully clear. When we have the individual behavior, we are observing the individual behavior. So when the behavior is distinctiveness in nature, so it means that will be clear highly affected by external factors. And when individual behavior, for example, is consensus, so it means again, as I told you, that it will be influenced by the external factor, or external, for example, causes will be high. And when there is a consistency in the behavior, so it means that there will be high internal factors influence as compared to external factor. Hope inshallah a bit theory will be clear to you. Now we are moving toward some perceptual errors. Like for example, when we are judging others, so while judging others, we are making some biasness, or we are full of some biasness, or we do some errors. So these are known as fundamental attribution error, or sometimes it is known as perception errors. What are those errors? There are so many errors. The first error is self-serving bias. What it says, the tendency of individuals to attribute their own success to internal factors while putting the blame for failures on external factors. By the name, by the definition, it is clear. Self-serving bias. It means an individual, when he will have, for example, success, so he credit clear, or she credit clear, get the credit of all the success by on the internal factor. And when, for example, he or she is facing the problem, they will put blame clear to the external factors. Like suppose I am a manager, I am a leader of a group. If my team works hard, and they achieve all the targets. So I will say that this is just because of my leadership quality. Therefore, my group got clear the, for example, targeted. And when, let's suppose, my team works clear ineffectively, or they are, let's suppose, not achieving the target. No, this team clear, the team members are clear inefficient. They are not working hard. What does it mean? When I got my team got success clear, I got all the credit. That this is just because of my own qualities. Is it my own leadership qualities? Is it? मतलब total success चे कम दे सहरा माँ वाखस्ता. लेकिन when my team is not performing well, this is just because of their ineffectiveness. This is just because of their laziness. मतलब दा दो दिला सादा दा सीधी. It means that this error is simply known as self-serving biasness. That where individual clear they get the credit on their success, and when they become failure clear they give the credit to the others. Hope inshallah a bit idea will be clear. Next we have selective perception. What is selective perception? By the name it is clear, selective. Selective simply means that we select the people upon clear or our own clear mutual interest, background, experiences or attitudes. Suppose زه یو کس هایر کول غواړم organization ته. Up during the interview صحیح شو زه چې ګورم that the individual interest is matching with my interest. Up my interest or his interest clear that is matching, so upon this matching of the trust I'm just going to hire the person. Up that is known as selective perception. अक्सर به تاسو لیدلی کنه تاسو ګورئ چې موږ وایو یاره دا کس فور ایگزامپل د دې موټیوز او زما موټیوز چې کوم دی دا ډیر زیات میچ کوي. Is it clear? So that is simply known as selective perception. People selectively interpret what they see on the basis of their interest, backgrounds, experiences and attitudes. کله کله موږ وایو کنه چې دا کس خو بالکل زما او د بیکګراوند سیم دی، دا هم ډیر زیات ایفورت نه راغلی دی، زم ډیر زیات ایفورت نه راغلی یم. صحیح شو؟ نو زما بیکګراوند چې کوم دی، زموږ ایکسپیرینس، زموږ ایفورت چې کوم دی سیم دی. دا کس چې کوم دی زما د ارګنایزیشن نه راغلی دی، کوم ځای ما کار کوو. صحیح شو؟ نو therefore I'm going to hire him. That perception is known as, or this error is known as selective error. Like as a way I'm for example, let's suppose so your teacher, I want to hire a teacher. That teacher چې کوم دی for example دا هغه انسټیټیوټ کې ټیچینګ کوي چې کوم ځای ما ټیچینګ کړی دی، کوم ځای ما سٹارټ اخیستی و. صحیح شو؟ نو کوم ځای چې ما ټیچینګ کړی دی صحیح شو دا ټیچر هم هلته ټیچینګ کوي. So just because of صحیح شو this reason I'm going to hire that person. This is again a perception and that is known as selective perception. Is it? نورم ډیر ذات example کې دی شي. Like for example ګوره یو سټوډنټ دی، یو ټیچر دی، صحیح شو، یو امپلوی دی، یو داسې سپروایزر انډر کار کوي چې هغې لاندې زم پاتې شوی یم. اب صحیح شو هغه سپروایزر ډیر ښه. Is it? So I'm just because of clear hiring that person because he worked clear under that person to whom I worked clear, for example under his or her supervision. So therefore I'm going to hire that person. Such type of perception error is known as selective perception. ضروري نه ده چې هغه کس کوم تکړی صحیح شو، لیکن صرف هایرنګ چې کوم دی دغه بیس باندې شوی دی. Next we have halo effect. What is halo effect? ګوره یو موږ سره دی halo effect or یو موږ سره دی horn effect. Mostly we are a bit confused between halo effect and horn effect. ګوره first په halo effect explain کوم چې دا څه وایي. Drawing a general impression about an individual on the basis of a single characteristic, mean that just study a single characteristic and upon the single characteristic make a general impression, a general idea, a view clear about the individual. Lekin remember this thing, this single characteristic will be positive. Suppose the way zama your student he is very much good in study. That is a positive trait of my student. The way he is very good in study, it's a positive, for example, trait characteristic. So he will be good clear in all aspects of the life. Matlab the student will be good in, for example, I am percepting this thing. Zara ke da perceive koma. Zama student che kam de he is good in study. Sahi shwa single positive characteristic de. So he will be good in games. He will be good, for example, in football. He will be good in swimming. He will be good in networking. He will be good, for example, in social interaction. It means that upon a single characteristic, I am generalizing clear a positive impression about my student. So this perception is known as halo effect. Yo de mung sara horn effect. Aksar student de ki confuse shi. چې څنګه موږ پوزټیو یو ټریټ باندې مکمل یو پوزټیو ایمیج جوړ کو سټوډنټ صحیح شو هالو افیکٹ دی سیم داسې په یو نیگیټیو ټریټ باندې مونږ یو نیگیټیو ایمیج جوړ کو اباوت د کینډیډیټ صحیح شو دیٹ از نون ایز هارن افیکٹ ګوره بای د نیم اٹ از کلیئر هارن مطلب on a single negative trait we make a negative impression clear a general negative impression about the candidate like زه وایم suppose زما یو سټوډنټ ته هغه سیګریټ سکي one of my student for example he is habitual with the smoking observe that is a clear a negative trait زه وایم چې دا کس for example student چې smoking کوي نو دا به خامخا نور negative activities به هم کوي अब what does that mean that I highlighted clear a single negative trait is it and upon that single negative trait I make a negative general impression about the individual and that is known as the horn effect I hope inshallah دوړو کې به تاسو لا فرق clear شوی هم now the next is contrast effect by the name it is clear contrast effect mean that I'm going to compare one individual with the rest of the other individuals and then I'm comparing clear that individual with the other individual and norm sadal fast comparing individual with one another to find out their positive and negatives like suppose that's a my students they are comparing me with Sir Tariq that's why Sir Tariq is very much regular but as compared to Sir Tariq Sir Adil is not regular for example that's why Mr. Asad is very much competent but as compared to Mr. Asad Adil sir is not competent what does it mean it means that you are going to compare one employee with another employee to highlight their positive and negatives is it so that is known as contrast effect dam your error ki deshi so it simply says that evaluation of a person's characteristics that are affected by comparison with other people recently encountered hope inshallah ide bata sula clear shawi hammi आसान होने concept थी दो difficult नहीं then we have projection see like me what does it mean projection attributing one's own characteristics to other people मतलब دا हम یو projection چې دا هم یو error کې دي شي ځان په شان ته کس لټول simply یا ځان کې چې کوم attribution دي ځان کې چې کوم characteristics دي دا بل کې قتل زوایا ما suppose I am very much committed with the organization. Now I can see this commitment into another person as well. I am very much sticky in sense that I am very much, for example, follower of rules and regulations. अब the next person, my employee must be clear like me. No zan pashan de kas katal. या zan के चकम for example attributes the qualities दी अगर बल चा के हम कतल सही शो same is it दे तमुंगा वही projection error نو ځکه د مخکې ما لیکلي دي تاسو سی لایک می دې مطلب قتل چې بالکل ما په شان ته نو کله ګوره دا هایرینګ کې ډیر زیات پرابلم کریټ کی لایک فار ایگزامپل دی وایم چې یو سټوډنټ دی یا یو انډیویډوال دی صحیح شو هغه خو دوره اکټیو نه دی and I am very much active so what does it mean अब زه خپل ځان په شان ته ټریټ چې کوم دی زه هغه کې وینم صحیح شو او په دې باندې د ډیسیژن اخلم نو اگین دا پرسپشن ایرر دی زه وایم فار ایگزامپل چې زه دوره فکرمند نه یم نو دا کس ولې دوره فکرمند دی is it اب اگین صحیح شو زما چې کوم ټریټس دي کوالټیز دي چې د لګي بلکې لټوم نو دا چې کوم پرسپشن ایررز دي دته موږ وایو پروجیکشن ایرر that attributing one's own characteristics to other people and the last we have the stereotyping by the name it is clear stereotyping judging someone on the basis of one's perception of the group to which that person belongs मतलब यो داسې ګروپ نه یو کس بیلونګ کوي او هغه ګروپ په باره کې زمونږ چې کوم پرسپشن جوړي هغه ډېر زیات داسې پازیټیو یا نیگیټیو جوړي لایک سپوز زه وایم چې being as a manager I hired a female for the key positions in my organization अब she spent clear 2 or 3 years clear in that key position but she was totally got failure she was totally unsuccessful in key position now when I am conducting the interview during the interview I am perceiving that females are not good for the key position or we shouldn't hire females for the key position अब गोरा female da group چې کوم ده په باره کې زما یو negative perception جوړ شولا अब this is clear female په ډله په باره کې I have a stereotype thinking چې کله هم organization کې key position important position higher level positions خبره کیږي نو زما perception دا جوړه ده چې females are not good for the key position don't mind student this is just an example صحیح شو یو بل example برابرلو suppose زه لارې کې چېرته روان یم and I'm in my car and I'm driving my car زه ګورم چې یو فیمیل چې کوم دا هغه اکسیډنٹ وکړو نو زه وایم چې ګوره فیمیل لګه گاډه چا ور کړه د فیمیل چرته گاډه چلولې شي دې اب this is my perception every time چې کله هم ډرایوینګ خبره کیږي نو زما ذهن کې دا پرسپشن جوړ دی چې فیمیلز کلیر کین ډرایو in the rush is it اب it means that is a particular group of female صحیح شو هغه په باره کې زما یو پرسپشن جوړ دی and this perception is known as a stereotype perception دې ته موږ وایو stereotype صحیح شو نو stereotype چې کوم دی فار ایگزامپل دا هم ډیر زیات غټ ایرر لري صحیح شو انډر پرسپشن کې hope ان شاء الله د ایرر به تاسو له clear شوی هم وي اب we have some specific implications in organizations in other words we can say that how organizations can reduce these errors یو خدا ده چې first employment interviews چې کوم دي they must be errorless دا سوره هم چې perceptual errors دي څه شو دا انټرویو نه remove شي like for example look at here زه وایم چې یو کس دی let's suppose projection error I am a manager is it I'm good in English suppose ما بهر چې دی for example وخت تیر کړی دی نو زما انګلیش ښه ده اب the person is very much talented اب technical position دی پر I am going to hire the person for the technical positions is it اب دې لپاره English is not important skill is important but my attribute is clear that I am good in English I spend a lot of time in for example outer countries so now I am perceiving that the person must be good in English or must be fluent in English what does it mean it means during the interview that is a perceptual error come your perceptual error the projection error the صحیح شو نو دا وایي چې انټرویو چې دی فار ایگزامپل هغه چې کوم دی هغه په ریل ججمنټس باندې انټرویو وشي په پرسپچوال بیسس باندې انټرویو ونشي we can reduce the error بیا دی we have some performance expectations the lower or higher performance of employees reflect preconceived leader expectations about employee capabilities ګوره common خبره ده if the manager has a high expectation is it if manager has a low expectation که یو manager چې کوم دی هغه expectations high دی employee نه the employee will perform well اکثر تاسو ګورئ کنه چې for example اکثر وایي چې for example دا subject چې دی مونږ ته for example ABC teacher teach کی because he is very good نو ګوره ABC teacher نه لګي سټوډنټان ډیر زیات expectation کوي نو ABC چې کوم teacher دی تاسو هغه ډیر زیات مهنت کوي چې whatever the students have expectation from me I must fulfill the expectations of the students ګوره common غونې خبره ده چې کله سټوډنټ وایي چې مستر دی دا سبجیکټ په موږ تاسو ټیچ کوئ نو ګوره په ما باندې فشاري وای بیکاز سټوډنټس آر ډیمانډینګ نو چې سټوډنټ ډیمانډ کوي نو زه کوشش کوم چې زیات نه زیات چې دی هغوی له ایکسپلینیشن وکړم صحیح شو I have to fulfill clear for example their expectation so therefore it simply says that the performance expectations صحیح شو دې باندې هم for example errors چې کوم دی هغه کنټرول کیږي then we have ethnic profiling ګوره very common ethnic profiles don't take the decision on the ethnic base like for example let's suppose Zawayama I will promote the person because I'm Pathan I will promote the Pathan people I'm Persian for example I will promote the Persian people is it for example then our norm days examples ki deshi no da way چې ethnic profiling چې کوم دی let's suppose په دې باندې دغه ونشي چې کوم decision making دی هغه ونشي دنه علاوه اب sorry performance evaluations ګوره دا کوم چې ارزیابي سیستم دی امپلوي ارزیابي سیستم is it must be accurate it must be flawless ګوره like for example halo effect there shouldn't be halo effect نو باید چې هغه کې halo effect یا horn effect چې کوم دی هغه پکې involve نشي and the last is employee effort whatever the effort put it by the employees it must be recognized clear by the organization if the manager they are not recognize the effort of the individual definitely what will be happen اغه moral level چې کوم دی ابو بالکل down شي اب how to reduce such errors focus on the goal first look for information that disconfirms beliefs means simply not focus clear on the first initial information the information must be gathered and decision must be taken and this decision must be rational in nature what is the rational decision making process saishwa abazda for inshallah rawan lecture okay clear kama then don't try to create meaning out of random events it means don't depend upon on the random event because these are random in nature saishwa چې coincidence چې کوم دی په دې باندې فوکس ونه کوي coincidence مطلب دا دی for example چې اچانک څه حادثه وشوله like for example یو سیلزمین دی فار ایگزامپل صحیح شو هغه بیمار شو او اچانک سیل پریوت هغه ایریا کې اب this is just because of the coincidence. It doesn't mean every time هغه ایریا کې به سیلز ډیکریز کیږي. No, this was just because of coincidence. یا فار ایگزامپل زما پروډکټ ډیر ښه دی لیکن لیٹ سپوز دغه پرایس چې کم دی یا هغه سیل چې کم دی کم ده. اب this is just because of the COVID situation. چې کله کووډ سچویشن ختم شي صحیح شو نو کېدای شي هر یو سیس چې کم دی دوباره په خپل ربط باندې واپس راشي. So don't focus on the random event. These are by chance. And then increase your options. Whatever the alternative you have, whatever the options you have, صحیح شو more and more options you have, more and more کسره decisions چې کوم دي تاسو سره اب هم ډیر خشي دي څوره تاسو سره alternative options زیاتی او تاسو good decision making attribute چې کوم دي هم سیوا شي. Hope inshallah a bit idea will be clear. Thank you so much.